where do you strike a balance between standardization and flexibility?
So we put in standardization to remove variation. So we're using the flexibility is in your creative problem solving.
So again, it's that key part around whatever process we're in, that people piece that you talked about. Are they, if we're connected, are they doing it just out of compliance, or they're all in?
Saying, I am going to empower my team to solve a problem, and then I'm going to have their back in every step of the way of this process. So if you don't believe in your people, you don't have that true leadership.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Adams, and I'm joined by another one of our hosts, Andy Olrich from Australia. Andy, how's it going?
Good, mate. Good to be back. How are you?
I'm doing great. We are currently in the middle of a big snowstorm here in Michigan. So we got a lot of school closings going on right now, and the snow is coming down. We're supposed to get quite a bit over the next 24 hours. So it's a little chilly out there right now.
Okay, sounds nice though.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to spring break. Not too much longer here. We'll be heading out on spring break, and a lot of us Michiganders go down to Florida for spring break. So kids are off school, and that's always a good time.
Great, sounds good.
Yeah. So today, Andy, we're going to be talking about process, specifically the process perspective, and I'm excited about our guest that we have coming on today. But before we bring our guest to stage here, I want to ask you a question. Process or people? Where do we focus first? Or is it both? What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely I lean to a bit, quite in the middle, but I am really people focused. I'd put people first, put them in the lead, and then, how we can then support them to come into the process or create a better process or a new process. So I'm really passionate about putting the people at the heart, and then getting them involved in the process to help improve it. So that's my thoughts.
Love it. Well, I'm excited to hear from our guest. Do you want to do a quick intro as we bring our guest to the stage?
Absolutely. So he's back. We were talking earlier before we came on that it's kind of like an annual thing to have this guy on, and we love having him. We get a lot of good feedback. It's Adam Lawrence, and Adam is the creator of the Wheel of Sustainability, and he's also the managing director of Process Improvement Partners. Decades of experience all over the world. He's done some really cool stuff, and I'm going to throw it to you, Adam. Welcome to the show again, and I'll let you go. Tell us a bit more about you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on, Patrick and Andy. It's great to see you guys again. Always a pleasure. So a little bit about me. So you can see I call myself a Kaizen ninja, right? So I love running Kaizen events. I am totally focused on very focused improvement with teams trying to solve problems they've never solved before in a very short period of time. So I'm an inch wide and a mile deep. Love to just do that. Done hundreds of them around the world. It never ceases to amaze me what people can do. And so the way I look at it is I help businesses grow their profits through sustainable process improvement. And the image of a ninja comes from the fact that it's all them, not me. So I empower the teams and give them voice and give them ways of thinking so that they can solve their problem and own the solution and then sustain it.
Love it. Love it. Adam, can I just jump in and kick us off with maybe a first question? We're going to be talking about process, specifically just process optimization, process improvement in general. I kind of hit Andy with a question in the beginning, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on people or process. Where do we focus first, and then after that, let's unpack this a little bit, talk a little bit more about just process optimization. So what are your thoughts on that? People or process?
So I'm going to edge way over towards the people. So here's where I am on this. If you get people excited, aligned, engaged, inspired, they can move mountains, right? So if you can help them see a process and make them feel comfortable and psychologically safe about, hey, we can do something about this, then they will. And I know we've all seen these amazing breakthrough results, but it's all about engaging those people to feel like they do have a voice and they do have a say, and will have their back so that the changes they make will help not just them, but their company, their coworkers, their customers. Then
Sure.
let's focus on the process that we want to improve.
Right. And just to expand on that a little bit too. So in prior episodes, we've talked a lot about your book, The Wheel of Sustainability. Where would people fall into the wheel? Is there a specific area that they would fall into, or is it all encompassing? Where do they fall?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's some obvious spots, but everything we do in the wheel is to improve the experience for the people doing the work. Okay, so the wheel is all about sustaining a change for the better. That's what Kaizen's trying to be, change for the better. So of course that impacts the people that do the work. Now, it's more obvious in a few spots. Clear benefits, the fifth spoke of the wheel. Basically, what we're saying here is the change we make must be seen as beneficial to the person doing the work, or they're not going to follow the change, right? So it's very clear and very quick to find out, are they really doing it? Or are they doing it just when the managers or the leaders are watching, right?
Mm.
But all the other spokes are doing this. The leadership commitment piece, this piece in the middle saying, I am going to empower my team to solve a problem, and then I'm going to have their back in every step of the way of this process. So if you don't believe in your people, you don't have that true leadership commitment. So again, I could bore you with every spoke of the wheel and how it fits people, but I think those are the two areas that are perhaps the most obvious to me.
Never boring, Adam. Never boring. But yeah, and we've had in previous episodes too, we've talked about soft skills in this season, this year in particular, and around failures and learning from or reframing failures. So again, it's that key part around whatever process we're in, that people piece that you talked about. Are they, yeah, if we're connected, are they doing it just out of compliance, or they're all in? And you do a lot of great stuff with getting people on that journey. So certainly not boring in my book. All right, we love to talk about case studies and examples. I'd love for you, if there's one, now that we're into this topic, is there something that jumps out from you in your experience in your career around this topic of getting that balance right, or a key learning, bringing people into the process and showing them, showing others the power of the person? Can you talk about one of those for us?
Oh, absolutely. So had many, many experiences. So I'll just do something very recent. The last few months, I've been conducting a number of what I call center lining and reliability Kaizen for some clients. So basically, in a manufacturing facility, as you guys know, we fight our process all the time, right? We work with what we're given and we do our best, but we're fighting. So this particular manufacturer is an extruder of a product, and it's supposed to be a straight line. Okay, it was not. So I'm teaching how to straighten the line up, lock things down, get the same heights, level equipment, level rollers, all these things. So at the beginning of these Kaizen events, the team, which is made up, the core group is the people that run the process. So the operators, the hourly technicians. And I always have a couple mechanics because we're going to do some work on the equipment. We're going to do it very quickly. So they're very skeptical. Hey, we've been fighting this thing for years. Our OEE, I'm going to make an assumption that people know what that is. Maybe I'm wrong. Was like 50%, which is chaotic. Okay, this is not a good number. This is not a good number.
Most organizations shoot for over 85, right? I mean, that's
what they dream for.
Yeah.
Right?
So 50% is quite a ways from there.
Let's call that chaos. So I could by eyeballs tell that the equipment wasn't lined up, it wasn't level, it wasn't square, it wasn't straight, it wasn't centered, all that kind of stuff. They, however, would keep fighting jams, twisting, bowing, etc., things like that. Okay, so I'm teaching them these methods, and of course, day one, they're skeptical, right? Why would you think that this guy comes in with all this energy, ball of twine, a plumb bob, a level, and some various other old school equipment, and we're going to get major improvement results? Well, now I've taught them some ways to look at their line. We go out and we're looking at it running, and now they're seeing all these issues. Hey, this doesn't look straight. This doesn't look square. Exactly. So we shut the line down. We run a string from the beginning of the line all the way to the end. We find out the end is 8.5 inches out of center, and the product's not 10 inches wide, so this is not good. So now they're seeing it, right? So all of a sudden we're squaring up equipment. They're seeing the things that they've been fighting, they can do something about. Nobody is stopping us. We're physically moving equipment, leveling equipment, doing all these things. And by the second day, the line's running better than anybody has ever seen before. And now they're fighting for locking it down, pinning it in place, putting it in their PM system, creating audits, doing all these things. So where am I going with this? So second or third day, one of the gentlemen that was working with us in Mississippi, so I've been to 5 of these one client's locations. I'm teaching them this so they can do this themselves, because anybody can get a ball of twine, right? Not a hard thing to do. He comes up to me and he says, "You screwed up. You gave me hope." And I looked at him, I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" Because now I believe they really do care about what I think. They are really listening to me. We can make these changes and it's going to help me. I said, well, then if that's what screwing up is, let's screw up some more. So, we just had so much fun with that. And what's very, heartening through all of this is that this company is now taking this strategy of, we're going to fix all of our lines. There's dozens of them around the country, and they can do this. Anybody can get a string. Anybody can get a plumb bob. Anybody can do this. I was their first guy to kind of prove it out to them. And now they're all believers. And what are we waiting for? We can do this. They've got our backs. It doesn't cost money. It just costs time, and it's going to be well worth it. So the upshot, 50% went to 75%, and they've held that as the minimum since then.
Wow.
Jams went from 55 a month to less than 5 a month. Anything over 0 is bad. I get that, but things are still going to go wrong because we didn't get to 85%. And I'm hearing all these other numbers, and it's just, what's so cool is they're seeing it, they're feeling it, it's different. We've had people say, "I hated to run this line. Now I don't dread it anymore. This actually is the best running line in our plant." Well,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the key is to not make them feel bad about how it was. That really is the most important, because you can feel really bad about the fighting that you had to do with your process. Now they don't.
I'm sorry to lead in with another question, but when we're talking about the people, like you had this, they've run the string and got it running well. I'm really interested for you to share how you captured the people aspect of, how did we get out of that spec? How have we shown that having those people given the time and space to go into that Kaizen event has really demonstrated the value of having them in the room instead of just bringing someone in with a laser alignment? We'll just line it up and then we're back on and let's go. So if you wouldn't mind sharing just a few simple ways that you're able to point to leadership, for example, if there was a couple there was like, we haven't got time to do this, like, let's just keep going. How have you really been able to show the benefits realized from having those core people given time and space to contribute to such an amazing improvement?
So here's what you guys probably know. Well, first of all, I want to step back for a second. First of all, continuous improvement, Kaizen should be like bowling. Anybody can bowl, right? 4-year-old can bowl, underhanded, right?
Take that as a challenge. I don't know. I might.
Yeah.
You haven't
seen me, Adam.
I don't say you have to be a good bowler. I'm not a good bowler. Okay. But a 4-year-old can bowl underhanded, right? A 94-year-old can bowl underhanded. In the middle is somebody who's going to attempt to do it with proper techniques and so on, right? But the way I try to make Kaizen and continuous improvement is so that anybody can play, as simple as possible, right? So anybody can find the center of something, pull a string, right? And kind of eyeball it and say, that looks straight, right? Now, lasers are fine, but when you have equipment in the way, the laser doesn't actually find its way all the way through. So my joke has been, this is the same ball of twine I've had since I flew kites when I was 8 years old. And I might not be that far off. So think about this one, though. When I first sold this concept to my client, my sponsor, I happened to be doing a strategic planning session for them. And I said, hey, I'd really like to understand your process a little better, because you're going to speak all these terms. I don't even know what you make. So let's go out. So I'm walking the line with my sponsor and I see people fighting and jamming, et cetera. And I said, I think we can do something here. And I don't think it's going to cost you much. This is not a capital issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news for him was he said, well, show me what you're talking about. So I go over and I show him, well, this clearly is out of level. This is not straight. This is jamming here. Look at the equipment here. And he got so interested in it that he brought the plant manager over. Plant manager starts asking me questions. Well, what do you think you can do about it? I can run a string. I can find you the center. We can level stuff. And guess what? You're going to take variation out of the process so that the people can work on the harder stuff, which is what are the temperatures and what are the speeds and feeds and the various other quality aspects. And we can take away the variation of the equipment's all messed up, right?
Mm.
So that's convincing enough. Now, the next thing I know, if you've been doing this long enough, is what is that worth? I mean, I can get you in a range. I knew that one Kaizen could easily save them $250,000 to $500,000 line annually. Okay, it didn't take long to figure that out. They're running 24/7. I know what the product is. I know what the crewing level is, so it doesn't take long. So, is it worth investing in a consultant for a week and taking people off their jobs for a week? I know what that costs as well. So it's a 10 to 1, 20 to 1 type of return. So unless you don't believe it's possible. So the good news is this guy thought it was possible. It became part of their strategy. I was their first guy in all their locations. Now they're accelerating. The strategy was finish all the lines by the end of 2026. Now they're doing all their highest value lines by the end of the first quarter of this year, with every line done by the end of the year. So we've taught them it's simple. It's just high level of detail, and anybody can do it. Anybody can pull a string, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can drop a plumb bob. So I'm showing mechanics how to do this type of work and operators so that they can now do it themselves.
Love it. No, that's a great story. Adam, whether we're talking about the story that you just told about the equipment, you mentioned reducing variation, right? I think about variation with the story that you just talked about, also in with just process in general, the process of facilitating a Kaizen event, the process of straightening a line, the process of putting out good product, whatever it is. Where does standard work or standardization fall into this? And is that like number one priority when it comes to reducing variation? Is making sure that the standards are correct? That's my first question. I have a follow up, but what are your thoughts on standard work or work instructions when it comes to process optimization?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you optimize, now you want to standardize, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
nobody ever loses that setting, right? So what we've done, where we can physically optimize and standardize, we're drilling holes in the concrete and pinning the equipment square centered at proper heights. Where we can't, so for example, we had to shim some equipment. So factories aren't always in the best shape. I'm just going to say that. I know that's a shock to you all. Factories. So where we've had to shim can be quite challenging. Sometimes it's under entire framework. Sometimes it's under bearings on rollers. Sometimes you got to get really creative. Okay, so that shim's going to fall out. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to standardize by putting preventive maintenance routines in. We're going to standardize to say every 2,000 operating hours, we're going to verify heights and levels
Mm-hmm.
of these 4 critical pieces of equipment or 4 rollers, right? But what we've also done is we've standardized a daily audit. So the operators, I let them decide what are the 8 to 10 things you're going to check every day to keep it from going back to the way it was on your watch. Because once they own it, like the guy that says you screwed up, you gave me hope. And I always create an area owner. So if you read my book, you'll hear all about area owners. And so it's always an hourly operator. They know it's coming. They don't want to be it, but by the end of the week, somebody volunteers, which is really
Yeah.
cool. And so they and their little operations team say, here are the 8 things we're going to check every day. That way, if those things are right, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're controlling. The standards are set and we're controlling to standard. We're following standard. We're making it visible, visual, easy to follow. pin in a hole. It's easy to tell I'm on standard or I'm not on standard. So
Yeah.
standard work doesn't have to be this complex type of thing. The other thing I like to do is create some visuals that show what good looks like, right?
Hmm.
So what are the three most important things to know on this piece of equipment? What does good look like? I'll have photos, description, arrows, and the explanation of why it's right, not what it is. And I always show it with respect to the person doing the work. So it's not this button is pushed, it's me pushing the button, me turning the handle. This is what it looks like. It's my right hand going clockwise or my left hand going counterclockwise. So that way, if I'm walking by and somebody's doing the work, I can tell immediately if they're following standard. If they are, thank them. If they're not, coach them.
Mm, I like that. Yeah, and so you mentioned area owners, and I wonder
Mhm.
where do you strike a balance between standardization and flexibility in processes to more empower those area leaders versus restricting them? Because I've heard from a lot of people like, well, when you put standard work in place, it makes me feel restricted, like I can't do anything, I can't come up with new ideas, and that's far from the truth. So, what's your take on that?
So we put in standardization to remove variation. So
Hmm.
get everything set and optimized. Now you can use your brains for solving the harder problems. Why did the color change of this product? Why is the width going? Problem solving gets a lot easier because we reduce variables. So now we can focus on the deeper dives of what really changed in this process, go upstream and figure out did a shim fall out? Did a bearing seize? What changed? So we're using the flexibility is in your creative problem solving, right? So why do I have to worry about things like, is my tire round on my car? We always want round tires on our car, unless you're Fred Flintstone. But if you if you're driving the car, why do I want to worry about it? Now, what I want to worry about is how do I deal with the traffic? How do I decide what route to take when the variable of there's a really terrible driver, or like you said, in Michigan, you're having a snowstorm. Well, we had some pretty, for Pennsylvania, we're kind of wimpy when it comes to snow, but it was hard to see. So, okay, that's the variable. So I have to change how I drive based upon that variable. But I don't have to think about whether the air conditioner is going to work or the heating elements are going to work.
Question, Adam. I'll just put this may put you on the spot, or I might have to pull you up for time. But I'd love to know, when have you gone too far with people, like leaning way too far, and the people that just it becomes like a revolution where it actually starts to throw all of that good work away? Have you got a case study or something that you've learned from someone else around how, hey, you actually recognize, we had too much of that soft skill or the people side in this?
Okay, so you're asking me, tell us about when you screwed up. Okay, so that's good. Um, so as a facilitator, sometimes I push a little too hard. Okay, so I've done so many of these. So part of this is almost a challenge for me to see how far I can get teams beyond whatever our objectives are for the week. Well, sometimes I might push and challenge a little too hard and potentially disengage people. So I know you find that shocking, as charming as I appear to be, right? But there are those moments. People say, gosh, you're patient. No, I'm not patient at all. In my head, I'm dying, right? Because people are having difficulty seeing beyond, right? So I have been known to push some people harder than they will tolerate, and they feel like I'm kind of shutting them down in their creativity. So that is, and I regret that, of course. The other side of that equation is, as much as I try to prepare leadership for their responsibilities, sometimes other things get in the way and the team doesn't feel nearly as supported or empowered as they should be. And typically, I can't take the place of their leadership. So, I try to do my best around that. So let me give you a good example of this, though. So you said almost a revolution, right? So we had an area owner in North Carolina in one of these reliability events. And he basically said, I am the new sheriff in town, right? We're not messing with this line. This line is the way we've always wanted it and beyond. So my sponsor who is a VP of operations, happens to be visiting, and he's of course curious about his investment in Adam and these teams, right? So he comes by, and area owner says, "Hey, you're responsible for this. Do it. You're doing an audit with me right now. I want to show you what we've done, and I want to get your perspective on it, and I want to show you why this is so important, and don't ever let us screw this up again."
Hmm.
So he grabs the VP. I wasn't there. I was told about this, so I can only picture it because I met the guy. I met both of them, so I could see it happening. And he basically was saying, "We will not accept anything to go back the way it was, and we need you to continue to support us in this way, and don't let whoever the next plant manager is let it go back to the way it was." So I love that. I mean, will it stay that way forever? I don't know, but at least at that moment, the passion of it, and being willing to speak to top leadership in that way, say this is bigger than the both of us. This is the right thing, the safe thing, the productive thing, the quality thing, whatever you want to call it. Don't ever let us go back to the way it was.
Mm, I love it. Adam, in regards to that same question around going a little bit too far, or maybe, I don't know if it's too fast, but I've had some experience with a few organizations in the past where automation is this new big buzz. And of course, there's a lot of valid areas for automation. There's a lot of valid places where automation is definitely necessary. But I've had a few experiences in the past where process optimization conversations led to, and this excitement for automation led to, let's just bring in an outside company and let's automate this whole process. And then when I was on site, I see that the automation wasn't being used. This company spent a lot of money to automate this process, but now they're back to manual, and it was a mistake because they actually ended up, when they did the automation, they automated a wasteful process versus taking the time to optimize the process properly ahead of time, and then maybe there's an opportunity for automation. But I guess just to come back around to my question, what should organizations do as they're thinking about optimizing a process? And maybe there's conversation about automation in the future, but what should they do ahead of time in order to, not go too far, too fast, and do the right things to make sure that the process is optimized properly before spending the money?
Well, that's a great question. I think you already know the answer. So, right, automating waste is a horrible idea. I've seen it many times myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually done Kaizen where we actually took out the automation to
Mm-hmm.
simplify the process. So clearly, if I've got a 15-step process that I can turn into 3, and then I want to automate, I'm all for that, right? So if there's things that are just repetitive that are putting people at risk. I'm picking up a 90-pound sack 40 times per hour. Okay, we could probably automate that, but do I need to pick up the sack? Is there a
Right.
better way to do it? So we have to be willing to ask those tougher questions to say, what do we really need to do? What is truly the essence of what we're trying to accomplish with this process? If we can get to the essence, so if you guys are familiar with production preparation process 3P, the whole
Mm-hmm.
idea is to understand the true essence of the process, design the waste out of it from the beginning, right? And then you can make decisions about where you want to invest in automation. I think a lot of companies have money in their budgets and they see something that looks really cool and they think that it'll just solve all their problems. The reality is people are your best asset here. They are so creative. They are so amazing at solving problems. You know, I've started to dabble in a little bit of AI. Okay, not in how I run Kaizen events, but basically to systematize some of the work that I do.
Sure.
But to be quite honest with you, work with your people first. You know, either work internally with some CI coach or get a Kaizen ninja like me or somebody else to help really step back and solve and simplify your process. Then decide where you want to throw capital. at it. I mean, people can throw millions of dollars at things. Like you said, you've seen it, I've seen it,
Hmm.
where they're not using, or it actually works worse than the process that they automated.
Right.
So why would you do that? And it continues to happen. This is not a unlikely occurrence. This happens all over the world. So I think this is where we add the most value, is where we can help people solve problems in a way that they can own, that is actually very inexpensive. I mean, I know I'm not cheap, but let's be honest, hiring one of me is a lot cheaper than putting in a multi-million dollar automated line, right? So why not make that type of investment with you guys or others like us to give it a shot, right? And then make those choices. So it's almost like doing good due diligence.
Yeah, that word hope, uh, an experience, if I can share, is having conversations about improving this particular piece of equipment. And one of the operators, he'd been there nearly 40 years, he stood up and he said, look, what's the point? They're going to automate this. I'm just going to come in every day. I'm going to do the bare minimum. I'm just going to turn up, do my job, go home, and I'm not going to try anything different. And he said, because we're going to be replaced by robots. And I just said to him, I said, if you want to be replaced by a robot, turn up and behave like one. That's probably the quickest way to get yourself automated out of a job. But all these other things from your experience, the way that you can, you can see which way the wind's blowing, and all of these amazing things from your experience working in this environment, that we can't program that. And really, if you can help us put some of this up on the wall, it could potentially delay or even divert them away from thinking about that software solution to just try and get rid of some of these difficult conversations that they're having with their workers. So I just think that's what you said there is so important. If you can go from 15 steps to 3, etc., do we ever need to automate it? But when we do, we know, and the people have been part of that. So yeah, great share, mate. Really, really passionate about that one myself.
Good.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Andy.
I was just going to jump in with another question, Patrick. But if you had something,
No. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So we talked about, I just sort of led into a bit there, but when we talk about optimization, you talked about standards. We've touched on that creativity. So creativity over capital. What would be your one hot Kaizen ninja tip when it comes to having a space or a place for creativity amongst all of the critical need for standards for certain things? What's your go-to? Like, how do you have like I don't want to put you on a percentage, but it's like, how do you make sure that that's kind of baked into the standard, that there is room for that creative moment?
Right. Okay. Perfect question. I love that. So what I do, clearly, let my teams decide what they want to work on. So my job is to expose them to new ways of thinking and see a problem as a problem that they can actually do something about. So if you're passionate about a specific area, you're going to put more energy into it, be more creative about it, and own it, right? So when I've done these reliability events, just staying on that, I've done so many different style events, but this is just more current. Um, we know we're going to center line, we know we're going to square, but there's other parts of the line that they're very concerned about. Hey, this doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing. So, for example, and I didn't pick it, but it was a big thing for them. There was piping that was improperly sized for a piece of equipment. So it was clogging the equipment and it was bugging them. So what did they do? They redesigned all the piping like in the moment. So that's where the creativity comes. I would have never guessed that was an issue or a hot button for them, but they picked it. And man, you should have seen what they did. So 10-inch diameter became 6 inches. I mean, did they engineer it? I don't know how they figured it out, but it didn't clog anymore. And these were hourly maintenance and production employees, and it was just brilliant. I wouldn't have figured that out. I mean, you could go into your thermodynamics books and maybe have figured it out. Nope. So what I do is I give them the space and the opportunity to try stuff. Try it, see what you learn. If it didn't work, try something else. So how many learning cycles during a Kaizen can we create? The other thing I do is I start off with some really ridiculous sayings that get right into their heads early, because I don't want them to get scared off by perfection here. So I say things like, hey, butt ugly by Friday. What do you mean by that? It just means it doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to work. So if you want to
Right.
duct tape and and baling wire it until you figure out what the final thing is. Do that. Then figure out what it is. Now I'll turn it into the thing you want it to be permanent. So it gives them that space. It gives them that confidence. I don't have to be right on the first try. I had a guy grinding a line in the floor of which he thought was the center line. It was not. So what did we do? We came up with, hey, let's make him an eraser for the grinding he just did. So don't make people feel bad about it.
Yeah.
This is the line. Okay. So put paint inside the right line, and then we'll take a picture of that so that people don't use the wrong line. And we'll just name it after you, right? Just so we can have fun with it. But that way you make it memorable, you make it fun. Nobody feels bad about it. They might give them a little ribbing about it, but at least they know
Mm-hmm.
this is the right line. And hey, I own that line. So that's how people get creative. You got to have some fun with it,
Yeah.
right? It shouldn't be a death march. It should be a fun experience, a winning experience for them, even if they don't hit all of their objectives.
Sure. So you mentioned an example of when you're running a Kaizen event or doing any kind of process optimization, how you embed continuous learning into that by having multiple rapid PDCA cycles or experimentation that's happening during these events. You also mentioned that you let the participants choose kind of the topics a bit. How do organizations design their processes that will promote things that maybe employees might not think about, like psychological safety or adaptability or things like that? Are there any strategies around just ensuring that we're designing some of that stuff into our processes?
Right. So, I can't tell you what the organizations do when I'm not there. What I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you is, first of all, not everybody hires me, right? So we've got to be aligned in approach, right? If you don't like my approach, you ain't hiring me. If you like my approach, you are hiring me. So chartering is where I start. So we're defining the thing that we want the team to work on. But when I'm charting with a sponsor, we're talking about what would that look like? We don't know what the answer is, but what does it look like when the team engages in it, and what is your role in that? So if they're not going to have their backs, if they're not going to participate, if they're not coming to the Kaizen newspaper check-ins or the team dinner or the report out, then it's not there. They just want an answer and they don't care about their people. If they want an answer and don't care about their people, we're not going to engage anyway
Mm-hmm.
because the team has no chance of winning. Now, psychological safety and creating that safe space, that's kind of embedded in. I will say that probably 5 years ago, I didn't even know what that meant,
Sure.
right? But what I can say that is it kind of aligns very well because people should have their voices heard and feel like they're listened to and have the opportunity to share their knowledge, their thoughts. So I use a lot of techniques to do that so that no one gets overwhelmed by anybody else in the room. It's very post-it note oriented. So it's just techniques that I learned over many years to try to give everybody that equal voice, using specific ground rules, making it fun, let no one be any better than anybody else. Everybody's thoughts and opinions are valued. Not everybody's ideas are going to get used,
Mm-hmm.
but at least they know they've been heard.
Right. No, that's key for sure. And as we kind of come first full circle here and start to wrap up our conversation just around process optimization, I want to go back to your book, The Wheel of Sustainability, because I think it's important that through all of, obviously there, a lot of this is very intentional in creating that sustainable long-term improvement culture. But after a Kaizen event or after any kind of process optimization, maintaining that long-term is important. And that's where the spokes for the wheel of sustainability come into play, right? So can you give us, just as we wrap up, last question here, can you give us just a feel of, okay, we just finished a Kaizen event and we were able to optimize this process that we were working on. Now what? Now what in order to ensure long-term sustainability and, not not just with that, but what's next, right? How do
Right.
we maintain that going forward?
So this might or might not surprise you, but we actually implement the wheel during the Kaizen event.
Mm.
So I introduce it on the first day, and every spoke is actually actioned on in the optimization of the process. So the notification, the why did we do it and what are the benefits so that they can speak to other people? How are we going to train people one to one? So the training and review portion. What's the visualization of the standard? So that's all built in, the tools that we need. The benefits have been identified. We've been getting people's feedback and ideas. We've created the layered audits. We know what accountability looks like, and we've been telling the stories of it. We created the leadership commitment by having the Kaizen, chartering it. I also add what I call the check act. So the team, now they own it. They are not beholden to me at all. I have been included in some cases and not in others. Every 2 weeks, they get the team back together for a while and they are reviewing where are they and where they need help, et cetera. So creating that ownership at the team level and at the site leadership level is critical. So one client has basically managing this across all locations. Now that is a given. That is the standard. We talked about it before the first Kaizen to say, hey, here's the best way that I know. And if that aligns with the way your organization wants to work, that would be awesome. So I've been hearing stories. They don't have to report back to me. Sometimes I get photos, I get the whiteboard with all the green numbers where it used to just all be red. But mostly, they got to own it. So it goes back to that Kaizen Ninja idea, the idea that the ninja is there getting stuff done, but was never really there.
Mm.
Because in the end, if they don't own their solution, there's no way for it to sustain. So
Yeah.
but the benefits of these things are just outrageously helpful
Yeah.
that as a business owner, unless business conditions change, right? I mean, I can't stop a business from closing a factory. But why would you want to go back to less safe and less productive and less efficient and more costly? It just doesn't make sense. So the things we're putting in make it so obvious that it's better and what standard is that it is. I can't say it's impossible, but one of my statements I make is make it almost impossible to do it the wrong way.
Mm.
So how do you do it? Pin in a hole. The pin's in the hole. We're running. The pin's not in the hole. We're still running. Oh, let's start problem solving because pin in a hole is the optimal location. Everybody knows it. You don't have to teach that. It's like there's a pin, there's a hole, there's a visual. We're on standard. So why are we off standard? Let's start problem solving before it causes an upset, right? So I can't guarantee it, but it's just the best way I know.
Sure.
And we've had some really good success. Not always. I don't want anybody to think this is 100%. Sometimes leadership does change. Sometimes leadership has their way of doing stuff. That is something that I will never be able to change, nor should I try to. But at least if you create the groundswell of this is the right way to do it, you've got a better chance to keep it that way, regardless of who's in charge.
Right. And obviously, if anyone is interested to hear a little bit more about sustainability, they can go back. If they like what they heard today, go back to previous episodes with Adam and hear a little bit more in depth about some of those spokes in the wheel of sustainability. But also, obviously, they can get your book, which is available out on Amazon, and we'll throw the link in the show notes. If anyone has any questions, though, Adam, where should they go to connect with you?
Right. So a couple thoughts. So my website, pi-partners.com, I've now put a link to a free chapter of the book.
Oh, nice.
Why buy the book? Take a test drive, right? So I put what I thought was the most important chapter, which is leadership commitment, right? Because it's really what everything revolves around. So there's that. There's also a button if you want to set up a quick call with me, right? So just pi-partners.com. That's an easy way to get to me. I do have a LinkedIn profile. I have a tight knit network of folks, right? So look me up at Adam Lawrence. You'll see the little ninja images everywhere. Right. If you want to check me out on prior podcasts, if you're not tired of my stories by now, you can hear more of them. I'm pretty sure they're different because The
Oh
ones I
yeah,
told today were more recent, vintage, so that's cool.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that the good news is we have a really nice community and we're here to help each other, right? I mean, I love just having conversations and exposing people to new ways of thinking without any obligation, of course. I mean,
right.
we're here to help each other. So that's the way I think this community should act.
Love it, love it. I love the process ninja or the Kaizen ninja. I actually have my ninja up here on my shelf that you gave me as a gift, right next to my globe showing Australia. For my friend Andy there.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
so yeah, but no, we so much appreciate you, Adam, and just we'll love to have you back on again to talk again about another topic. As I mentioned before, we always have really good feedback on your interviews. So thank you for being on the show, and best of luck to you this year.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me, Andy. Great seeing you again. Patrick, always a pleasure. And I appreciate you guys.
Good on you, mate. See you next time.